What's going on, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the first episode of Tankin with Steph and Jay. I want to preface before we get into this video that northfinusa.com is now going to be offering a discount code for the month of July for 20% off, and all you have to type in is July in all capital letters. July, 20% off from July 1st to the end of ACA. That's right. Let's get to Tankin with Steph and Jay. Come on!
No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
If I find my way home, yeah. Wouldn't it be crazy? But you still amaze me.
Hey YouTube, welcome to the debut episode of Tankin with Steph and Jay. For our very first episode, we're going to talk about whether or not we'd prefer wild-caught or tank-raised fish. I am going to give you the cop-out answer and say both, and there's a couple reasons for that. So first, let's talk about wild-caught fish. Some of the great things about wild-caught fish are it's fun. It's fun to go collect your own fish. You know what collection point you're going to, so you can get generally a good verification of whatever species you have. There's also a lot of genetic diversity available in the fish that you catch, and there's a ton of great programs like Project Piaba down in Rio Negro, which help the local fishermen establish sustainable practices and get them involved with environment conservation so that they can continue to have these types of jobs available for future generations. A couple of the downsides for wild-caught fish, there's definitely stress with all the shipping. So if you get something from Lake Malawi that ships all the way to Florida and then ships again to Oregon or Washington, you know, that's a considerable amount of travel time for a fish, and it can weaken their immune system. Another problem with wild-caught fish is illegal catching. So if there is a fish that's endangered, but there's a demand in the market, then some people are going to find a way to get it to those people to make a little bit of money, and it reduces the biodiversity in the wild, which, you know, is definitely not a good thing. There's also a lot of really unfortunate collection practices, especially when you look at the saltwater side and things like cyanide. Using cyanide to catch fish is dangerous both for them and for the surrounding environment, and then a lot of those fish don't even make it to where they're going, or if they do, they don't last very long. When you're talking about tank-raised fish, there are definitely some great benefits there too. There's not a lot of transport time, which is nice, so it keeps stress levels low. You're supporting local breeders, which they make it look easy, but it definitely is not. There's no environmental impact when you pass along tank-raised fish. And there are also programs that support those activities like CARES, so fish that are endangered in the wild that cannot or should not be collected anymore. It encourages hobbyists to breed them and keep passing them along so that future generations can enjoy them as well. There are some downsides as well to tank-raised fish. There may be not as much genetic diversity or a lot of inbreeding, and there could be some compromised specimens as well, you know, especially fish that are prolific. If someone's an inexperienced breeder and they're not well informed on what desirable traits are or when fish should be culled, then we get a lot of weaker specimens being passed along, and, you know, people deal with fish dying for reasons they don't know, or there's just issues with the fish overall. There's also a lot of hybridization with tank-raised fish, especially when you look at like Central Americans, for example, or Aspidoris or Lake Victoria fish. So there's no guarantee that what you are being told you're getting is what you're actually getting. So if you're breeding said fish with one that has been verified, then you're still polluting the bloodline as it goes forward, and there's not really a good way to verify the information that you're getting either. So that's my story. I'm choosing wild caught and tank raised, both for different reasons. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us.
Steph, you chose both answers? Come on. So here's the deal. I will not buy wild-caught fish. I will not. All of my fish are tank-raised or F1 or further away from wild-caught. And the reason being is because there's too much that goes into wild-caught. Now, if I was going to breed a fish to further its species, then yes, wild-caught would probably be the best because I'm going to get those traits that haven't been kind of messed with the human hand. But when it all comes down to it, to me, wild-caught fish go through so much prior to getting to its location, and then goes through even more before it gets to the fish hobbyist, Aquarius, or wherever that fish may be going. And let's say it gets to a fish store, a local fish store, then it still has to wait to get bagged up and then get to that fish keeper's tank. So when I look at wild caught fish, they're amazing. They look great. Sometimes they take a lot longer to color up, which frustrates the average hobbyist. Food becomes an issue because sometimes they may not take mass-produced food because, well, they just got ripped from the wild. So I think it's very important to understand that if you're going after wild caught fish just because it's wild caught and it's a title you can place onto that fish, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons and you're probably not going to have the best outcome. But if you know what you're getting into and you're buying wild caught breeding groups, things of that nature, then absolutely it would work for you. So I'm a tank raised guy or an F1 and further, and the reason being is because, well, one, they know the exact acclimation of being from one tank to another. The stress, although still there when they move from one location to the next, isn't as abundant as when a wild caught fish is ripped from the lake, thrown into a tub, driven to a location, separated, put back into a tub, packaged up, sent to the airport, to the transshipper to the location, whether it's a local fish store or direct into the hobbyist. So there's a lot of time that plays into that wild caught, where a tank raised fish is coming out of that tank, going to the location it needs to get to, and then either to the local fish store or the fish hobbyist. So when I look at it, I'm gonna go ahead and say I prefer tank raised fish for a few reasons. One, I believe they're a little bit more hardy. They do take to a lot of different foods. I don't wanna say they're easier to keep, but they give you reward faster than what wild caught will. Although I will say with a wild caught breeding group, the reward that takes much longer is definitely amazing. So Steph, good on you for taking the easy way out. I'm gonna go with tank raised. Thank you so much for watching the first episode of Tankin with Steph and Jay. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you enjoy further episodes with Tankin with Steph and Jay. Let us know the next topic you wanna hear in the comments, and you know what's next. Holla!